and gentlemen, and welcome to the KPPC Kuwait Public Policy Lecture Series online webinar version for the COVID-19 situation. For this month's lecture series, we have a very interesting topic for you tonight. It's going to be about global trends on urban resilience with Jafar Friaa. About the lecture today, urbanization is a positive force that enables people to benefit from economies of agglomeration through increased productivity due to economic density, accelerated innovation from knowledge spillovers, and greater mobility and access to jobs and services. However, the congestion of cities also puts immense pressure on land and natural resources, causing undesirable outcomes from housing shortage, suboptimal basic services, increased pollution, the traffic congestion. This presentation will showcase examples of the World Bank's global integrated solutions and cutting-edge support for cities, seeking to improve urban livability, resilience, and competitiveness. Let's talk about the speaker tonight. Since joining the World Bank in 2005, Mr. Jafar has held various assignments, including Program Leader for Sustainable Development and Infrastructure for Maghreb countries in the Middle East and North Africa MENA region, and at the World Bank Program Leader for Pakistan and South Asia region, Lead Urban Development Specialist in MENA, and Senior Environmental Specialist in Water Resources and Environment Department in MENA region. Prior to joining the World Bank, Mr. Friaa worked as a public servant in his country in Tunis, where he held various positions, including Division Chief, Director, and Head of Department in the National Sanitation Authority and Ministry of Environment and Territorial Development. For tonight's session, we will have a live translation in Arabic. For those that would like to listen to the live translation in Arabic, just click on the bottom, the French channel, and it will automatically turn to the live translation in Arabic. Let's begin with a small statement from His Excellency, the Secretary General of the Supreme Council of Planning and Development, Dr. Khalid Mehdi. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Faris. We would like first to welcome Mr. Jafar Friaa for his acceptance to shed the light on cities, connecting the people to prosperity. We would like we hosted him before in a very long discussion. We believe that his vast knowledge and experience will shed all, and what would be implication. As I said, the Kuwait Public Policy, it is a platform in order to understand the international best practices done around the world. It is not, and I keep saying our motto, and we act local. At the end of the day, the Kuwaitis are the ones responsible for setting up their local policy with the help of our global partners. I would like also to welcome Mr. Ghassan Khoja, the director of the World Bank office here in Kuwait. We welcome him from Washington, D.C. Ghassan is a very dear friend of Kuwait, a great partner, and his collaboration with the General Secretariat of the Supreme Council of Planning and Development is pushing and giving all the support for the implementation of the Kuwait National Development Plan. I would like again to welcome Mr. Dr. Jafar Friaa and to enjoy as you speak about cities connecting people to prosperity. The floor is yours now, Dr. Jafar.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Khalid, and thank you very much, Dr. First. I'm really delighted today. It's a very good pleasure to be with you for this event to talk about one of the most important agenda today in the world and also in our MENA region. And we are gonna spend basically the upcoming hour talking about cities, and I'll start with a very quick presentation that will last between 30 to 35 minutes, and then we'll leave some space to hear from our panelists, Dr. Ghassan and our Dean and Executive Director, Dr. Mirza. So thank you very, very much for our KPPC colleagues for this invitation, and let me start the presentation immediately. So good evening to everyone. Good afternoon. I know our colleagues from Washington, D.C. are also joining us. So welcome to this excellent event. Cities is basically one of the most important space for the humanity since we started. And it was always a space, a very important space actually, where opportunities and challenges are combined. So the most important question is how to identify those opportunities and how to overcome those challenges so we can make the city in general a nice place to basically people to prosper, to live, and to work. And through this first slide, I would like just to highlight some very important numbers that are always related to the city agenda worldwide. So as you can see, cities in the world host about 55% of the global population. This is a large share. And you can imagine how much this capital can contribute to the global and to every country growth and prosperity. The second number, which I love a lot, that 80% of economic activities and so of the GDP produced in all the countries global-wide, the cities represent about 80%. This is a big number. And so you can see what kind of opportunities these cities are offering to the humanity. Now let's move a little bit about also the challenges. And you can see that 70% of the greenhouses, which is more related also to the consumption in terms of energy, it is also produced in cities. Here there are some numbers that we need really to be scared with. The first one is that 1.5 billion of people will be exposed to natural disaster, including cyclones and earthquakes in large cities by 2050. And the last number, which is very, very important when it comes how we can use in a very cost-effective and efficient manner the land and the territory within cities. And so today, 1.2 million of square meter basically of new urban built-up area by 2030, half is yet to be built, which means that looking forward, we need really to take care how best and how better we can plan for our city. And we have a very recent number, and this is basically during the ongoing unprecedented pandemic and global crisis, which is about COVID-19. And the last number that we got from many studies that more than 95% of COVID plus have been recorded in urban area. So this is just to give you how much the city and how much the urban centers in general are very, very important for our people, for our economy, but more important for our future. The second slide is basically also to basically tell you how much the city agenda is also part of this global sustainable development objectives and goals. And as the international community basically dedicated and asked the cities to play one of the most important roles, which is about how we can make communities and urban centers as sustainable as possible. This is what we call the SDG 11. But the cities are also contributing to many other very important sustainable development goals. And just to name few of them, we have the climate action SDG 13, we have SDG 10, which is very, very important these days, which is about how we can reduce inequalities. And inequalities, whether in terms of space, or in terms of economy, or in terms of social. The objective is how we can reduce social exclusion, and so all the citizens can feel as a first-class citizen in their country. This is very, very important, and I'm sure it justifies some of the social problems that particularly MENA went through during the last few years. Now, I think in the introduction, Mr. Fares made reference to the urbanization and not to the city, and he's absolutely right, actually. It's about the urbanization and how the urbanization today and even before is really a very positive force that enables people to benefit from agglomeration economy. What does it mean? This means that cities need to manage the trade-off between the agglomeration and the cost of congestion. And here I'm gonna go to the second slide, which is basically to show, yes, the city should help to offer a better space to grow, a better space to live, a better space to work, but we need to be very careful, mainly when it comes to how to manage the urban space, how to manage density, and how to manage infra and services, because urbanization come also with some problem. And just to name few of them, congestion, air pollution, the cost of infra, et cetera, are among the most important challenges that any city government, any high-level decision makers at the city level need really to keep in mind while they are preparing for the strategy of the future of their cities, but more important, how to transform those cities. Now, what does it mean when it comes to this transformation of cities that I was referring to? What are the main goals and the main mission that we can give to our cities if we would like to prosper and if we would like to give all these opportunities mainly for our young population? And usually, at least at the bank, we are talking about three main pillars or three main goals. How we can help the mayors, but also the central government to make their cities competitive, livable, and resilient. And I think if we take always this very important dimension and so very important goals, I think we can pretend and we can prepare for a better future of our cities. And so the idea is always to focus on our people, which means how to attract and support investment to create jobs, rise productivities, increase income of city population, and all this together are the main important ingredients to make city competitive. This is very, very important when it comes to prosperity and economic productivity. The second is about livability, which means how to provide attractive and affordable places with quality services for all to live, work, and play, which means what kind of conditions and life condition we can provide to our citizens, but also to our firms, because we need all these investors to enjoy living in a city. And that's what makes basically the difference between a livable city and the less livable cities when it comes to attract also investors. And that's make the link between livability and competitiveness. Now, the third one, which is very, very important, because we can invest every year, either on people or on firms or attract private sector, create assets here and there. But if we don't do it in a very resilient manner, we may lose them in the future. And this is because of the very changing environment when it comes to climate change, natural disaster, but also when it comes to economic shocks and pandemics like COVID-19. So it's very important to keep the metrics for any city should be around competitiveness, resilience, and livability. Now let's go. I don't know. Looks like I have a small problem. Okay. Now let's move to the first dimension, which is competitiveness. And how to attract and support investment to create jobs, rise productivity, and increase income of city population. Cities always thrive when people and firms benefit from being closer together, which means density, but in a very proper manner, through compact and connected design, creating agglomeration economy. So we are always talking about how to make it compact, so the cost of infra and service delivery can be at its optimal, but at the same time, how to connect cities to its peers or to the rural areas, or more important, to the international market. And this is what makes the city at the center of all this dynamic. And I would like here just to highlight something very important, is how we can help the mayors and the national government to basically improve the doing business at the city level. And this is probably the best attraction, which means things like getting and building, for example, permit very quickly, allowing variation in buildings and norms and standards, whether in terms of density or in terms of occupation, et cetera, but also flexible zoning and building regulations to keep up with evolving economy and social needs. And here the social is very, very important. So the restrictive regulations often rise living condition costs and stifle, of course, opportunity. So this is very, very important. And I would like here to emphasize how much doing business is very, very important, and so attracting firms, but also population, which means also promote the labor market. Also trying to improve the environment within the city in terms of the amenities. This is something very, very important to keep in mind. And if a city, for example, want to attract highly skilled people, the quality of the environment is a way of doing it. Today, people move to city because they are looking for a better life, because they are looking for a better job, because they are looking for opportunities. But more important, they would like their kids rise basically in a better environment. Better environment here goes beyond an excellent air quality, goes beyond have access to water and sanitation and electricity, but also having an excellent and quality of social services, which mean education and health. So you see, it's really a package. And talking about cities is talking about everything. But the most important thing, how to plan for it, how to sequence all this, how to coordinate all this. This is another one that we will discuss later. Now, I'd like just to zoom a little bit on one of the most important topic. And to tell you, I put it in the middle of my presentation because, and here we are in MENA, and MENA is really lagging behind when it comes to land, sector, and system modernization and reforms. And land is an input for housing, is an input for investment, is an input for public space. We need land everywhere and for everything. However, the land and real estate are really key resources that need to be unlocked to attract business, private investment, and for effective service delivery. And that's why I put this slide in the middle of my presentation, just maybe to see how we can spend a few minutes later on for the discussion. So in our views and based on the international experience, and the bank is working in many, many countries trying to support our counterpart there basically to modernize their land system. So we think that the government needs first to assess, monitor, and evaluate the real estate market and identify constraints, but also problems. And just to give you some examples, whether we have a very clear land right, this is something that it is very, very important. Whether the timing for infrastructure, is it certain or uncertain? Whether we have unclear, lengthy development process. How the transaction in terms of land, whether to sell or to buy, what is the transaction cost? Are we really facing a high transaction cost? How much the land contribute to the cost of any investment? And I know that in many, many countries in MENA, the cost of land represent a big share, which makes our cities and so our countries less and less competitive. So there is definitely a need for modernizing the system to make it more transparent, to make it more efficient. And of course, land is also an excellent input to develop some innovative own source revenues, mainly for cities. And we are gonna see that in the following slides later on. This slide, because we have always land goes in parallel with infra delivery and service delivery. And here, just to give you an idea how cities need to play a big role in providing infra, and whether cities can do this by themselves or they should continue to rely on government transfer. And if not, what are the alternatives? This is what you would like to expand and to present during the upcoming few minutes. So as you can see, basically the infra needs, if you look to the total cost in terms of investment, we estimate the financing gap between $4.1 to $4.7 trillion per year. And if you see in the main infra or the main services, the water and sanitation, transport, ICT and power, you see that in the urban area, the last share is for water and sanitation, the second is for ICT, and of course, this is an invitation to promote digitalization and how to automate most of the services within the urban area. While for the power, of course, is much more at national level, and for the transport is equitably shared between rural and urban. So again, here the city is playing and should play a big role on how to mobilize financing and how to address these gaps in terms of infra and service delivery. So I said that cities cannot continue forever to rely on their national government, on their intergovernmental transfer, and they should innovate in terms of generating new source of revenues. There are some that they are very well known through the world from many, many decades. And here, this slide shows you how the property tax today represent in terms of percentage of local government. And as you can see, most of the developed countries, this property tax represent a lot when it comes to the source of city to mobilize financing. Unfortunately, in MENA, this is not the case. In addition to this new innovation or innovative source of revenues, should we continue to rely only on public investment to address infra gaps in cities? The answer is definitely not. And here where there is definitely today a need to promote what we call the private capital investment. So mobilizing more private investment is definitely something that can help both the capitals, but also the cities to mobilize a source of funding and address these gaps in terms of infra. I made reference earlier when I started this presentation how much the coordination and collaboration among the different players in the city should be. And so we strongly believe that ultimately cities must be underpinned by good governance. And when we say good governance here is about good collaboration, transparency, and accountability. And when we say coordination, it's not only vertical coordination, but also horizontal coordination. It can be even within the cities, but can be also between the cities. Capacity for planning and implementation. In many countries, we push it for decentralization, for example, and to give the cities more power when it comes to planning and use of their resources. Many failures, mainly because this transfer of mandate and this transfer of resources wasn't accompanied by a capacity building and institutional development effort. And so we have seen on some cases some failure. Now let's move to the second important pillar, which is about resilience. And just to remind you here, resilience again, it's resilience to natural disaster, resilience to global crisis and pandemics, resilience also to economic shocks. So what we see here, what this slide shows is basically shocks and stress are diverse and have multifaceted impacts on cities and so on the people and on the economy living and hosted in this city, by these cities. So they vary from, as you can see, from climate change, disaster risks, pandemic, cyber risks, and of course, other social and economic shocks. The disruption and losses impact city systems at large, including the society and economy, governance and economy, and infra and environment. So resilience is definitely something that will impact everything within the city, and we need to handle it, but in a very integrated manner, taking into consideration not only the risk that we identify, but what are the most impacted assets and people, and the solution should be very well thought and definitely multi-dimension and multi-stakeholder solution. What we have seen during the last decades, that the cities need to prepare for a big escalating disaster impact on assets, unfortunately. Not only on assets, but also on people and economies. And if you look to the average total damage and the set between 1976 and 1985, it has been estimated at that time around 14 billion. Today, we have 10 times between 2005 and 2014. This is really something that any high level and middle level policy makers need really to think about it and make sure that this is integrated and taken into consideration for any planning and for any investment, and so for any standard and norms that we will use while we are building for our future. Here, just this slide, just to show you some of the effects of the climate change. And as you can see, very, very significant and alarming at the same time. If you look to the coastal and river flooding, which is becoming more and more frequent, but also intense during the last few years. And you will see, for example, how much they impacted when it comes to the total population impacted by this kind of natural disaster. You will see that basically we moved from around 900 million people. This will be 1.3 billion by 2050. This is huge, my goodness, we need really to be careful. The same in terms of assets, $46 trillion in 2010, and 4 decades is absolutely nothing in the history of any country. We will have basically 3 to 4 times by then, reaching more than 158 trillion of US dollar. This is huge, and again, climate change today should be part of any policy for any city in the world, not only because it's a global public good. This is because it impacts not only our people, but also our assets, and I mean here economic assets. So we need really to take care and to pay special attention, mainly when it comes to planning. And I know how much, Dr. Khaled, you are keen about how we can make whatever development planning for the future very sustainable. Climate change should be there, and I think today climate change, everyone recognizes that it is really a reality. It's not something that we only read, but we live every day. When I started, we talk about this this impact of urbanization. And of course, one of them is the air quality. And we see it in many, many mega cities, whether in the world or in MENA. And air quality, unfortunately, is declining around the world, as you can see, although it has been improved a little bit during COVID-19, but this was not for the real cause, because most of the economic activities have been slowed down, and that's why less consumption of energy, so less pollution in the air, better air quality, but I don't think this is the model that we would like. The model that we would like is a model where we can promote more use of clean technology, more carbon footprint in our mobility and transport, etc., etc. So air quality is also another dimension that we need to take into consideration for any planning process. And the last shocks and stress that we may need to talk about, and by the way, shocks and stress are always very interconnected. We were thinking about public health stress and pandemics and how they can extend to create economic shocks. I think COVID-19 showed this correlation in a very, very clear and explicit manner. So we don't have the choice. We need to take into consideration not only climate change and natural disaster, but also this pandemic and this global crisis. These slides have been offered by one of my my colleague and team members, and it's a kind of model that we basically use it to see how cities as an engine of economic growth can be really impacted if there is a huge and very intense shock. And of course, as you can see, city-state will definitely be hit the most, because city-state, most of their economy and growth are concentrated in cities. And so if you look, for example, Kuwait, unfortunately, in case of a big disaster, they would be losing a lot. Now, let me move to the last one, which is about livability. And how we cities and national government and partners can work together to make cities better, in a better shape, so they can be attractive for both people and firms. And I'm starting by one of the key elements for a city livability. It's about housing. The first thing that we look when we move from outside the city to city, or from one city to another, or from one continent to another, the first thing that we started searching for where I should live. And so where is this house that I would like to use for me and my family? And that's why housing is one of the most important topics that the cities and the national governments should basically handle, but in a very, very proper manner. So we think that affordable housing is one of the most pressing issues in cities today. And I'm sure the case is in Kuwait, but also in my home country, Tunisia, which requires a very integrated and holistic approach towards sustainable and attractive communities. And here, what we developed recently in the bank is what we call a value chain approach. And you can see this value approach can reduce formal housing costs through sector interventions and regulations, planning, construction, land, and tenure. So the question is, I think both the demand and the supply side, both of them are very, very important. What we should avoid is to focus only on one part of the problem, whether in terms of supply, and then we focus on urban planning, on construction, on land, etc., or in terms of demand, and we focus mainly in terms of housing, finance, etc. I think the best idea is to think about this sector in a very holistic manner and try to move on both sides, the demand and the supply. More important, it's not about construction, but it's also about construction and policy reform. It's not only about construction and policy reform, but it's also about financing. The most important goal, how we can have an affordable housing, and so we can secure a decent house for everyone in any country, and so in any city. Now let me move to, I'm not sure if it's a recent topic, but I know that in many, many countries, we are not paying enough attention to what we call livable places or public spaces. And I think this is really a missed opportunity, because many cities focus much more on the construction, much more on the road and on the infra, but they don't pay enough attention to the public spaces and all the spaces that they need to offer to their citizens, so they can exchange, so they can be used as part of the culture space where we can exchange, where we can socialize, etc., etc. So many countries also, they don't pay attention to what we call the green space. And so green space, social space, public space in general, today is a new element that it's getting more and more attention in many, many developed countries and even in some developing countries. And at the same time, this public space are also used around some very important cultural heritage, downtown, etc., to boost some of the local economies and local businesses. And it's really giving an excellent, excellent outcome. So important to, again, pay specific attention to those places and see how we can leverage on municipal owned public space, heritage assets, and green areas. During the last and the ongoing, actually, COVID-19 crisis, we were talking a lot how we can be mobile without much impacts on our health and on our safeties, but how also cities need to ensure walkability and not only using cars and public transport. I think this is also another transit option that we need to consider, not only to connect to job, but also to services. And I know that Kuwait is moving toward this target. I know that the idea now is, or the question that many of the stakeholders in Kuwait are asking, how we can make the city of Kuwait more walkable with less use of car, etc., etc. And this is related actually to everything, including, of course, the climate change and the air pollution, etc., etc. Now, I would like to spend a few minutes here and emphasize once again all what we are doing in terms of competitiveness, in terms of livability, in terms of resilience, etc., etc. All this because we would like to have any action within city people-centric. At the end of the day, is really to serve our population. Young, women, men, vulnerable groups, minorities, etc., etc. And that's why this new concept of community participation, citizen inclusion, citizen engagement, it's definitely a very, very important element. And this is not only to make sure that we will deliver services and infra to basically respond to specific needs of our population, very well identified needs with the inputs from our population, but at the same time to offer the space to the citizens to basically express their views on the adequacy and on the quality of the services provided. And this will not only secure a better value of our money, but it will contribute to create trust and more trust between the government and the citizen, between if I can say, the provider of services and the population. So this kind of trust will definitely contribute to a better accountability. So when we will ask people, for example, or citizen or any user of service to contribute to the cost recovery of services, and that have been involved at a very, very early stage, this will definitely improve the ability, but also the willingness to pay. And this is very, very important, important element and quant that we need definitely to promote and make sure that it is one of the key strategic elements of any plan to develop our cities. These slides complement basically what I have said before. Rising inequality and exclusion within cities and the right development progress, hence the need to create more inclusive cities is definitely a very, very important concept. That's why cities need to create friendly environment for all. And as I said, aging population, young population, vulnerable groups, marginalized. The most important idea here and message that I would like to share, if I can say, is that we need to make sure that everyone counts within our cities. No one is left behind, because we would like to ensure what we call inclusive cities. So people feel that they belong to the city, but feels also that they own the city, and so they can contribute in a very constructive and very positive manner. Now, with this very nice story about cities, challenges, opportunities, main goals, where we need to be, what can we do about it? And I think this is a very, very important question. At the World Bank, we believe that our mission is really to build resilient, sustainable, and livable cities. And so, if we have resilient, sustainable, and livable, mean that we have competitive cities. And that's why we have these 4 blocks. So our framework for any engagement, for any dialogue, whether at the city level or at the national level, we were always talking about these 4 pillars. The first one is about green cities. And so how to make low carbon city development, either in the urban mobility, street lighting, urban environment in general, solid waste management very specifically, inclusive cities. I think we talk about that, but here we would like to highlight how we can make the cities more inclusive to take care of this informal settlements, slum upgrading, access to basic service for all, citizen engagement, participation, and urban poverty. Resilient, I think we went through it, climate change, natural disaster, pandemic, etc. And of course, the competitiveness and how we make the competitive cities. I went through it, but here I would like just to highlight something very important. Competitive cities doesn't mean city is very well equipped in infra and they can provide a very good service. Competitive cities mean also that we can create growth either at the local or regional level, but also create jobs. And of course, competitive city means that we manage in a very effective manner our land. And again, for a country like Kuwait, the 3 assets are oil, people, and land. And I think land is very, very important in this context. So now how to manage and how to get there, this is what we need to work on. Usually we think about how we can plan in a very integrated spatial land use and territorial planning, plus land and housing market, how to connect cities. And here we are talking about city system, but also smart cities, and how to finance. And earlier I talked about how the cities can help and rethink the way they are financing their infra and urban service delivery. Now, I'd like just to move very, very quickly through some very, we think, very good examples. We developed for the first time in MENA a sub-national program for the economic capital of Morocco. And I'm sure you know Casablanca. And so Casablanca basically represents more than 35% of the country's GDP. It's the largest city when it comes to population. And of course, it hosts most of the economic activities of the country. So the program was very simple, but very focused in terms of expected results. And the first one, how we can help the city of Casablanca to increase the municipal investment capacity, because it was very obvious that the city of Casa cannot continue to this transfer coming from Rabat. The second, how to improve the urban environment, including access to basic services and some less equipped neighborhoods, but also improve the city, street, and public space. And the third one, and I highlighted this earlier in my presentation, how we can help the city of Casablanca to contribute to improving business environment in Morocco. And the study shows that if we improve the business environment in Casa, this will increase for more than 30 to 40% the business environment at the country level. And here it was very simple how we can introduce and take advantage of digital technology to improve access to administrative service for both firms and citizens. And I can tell you this program is moving very well, is really delivering excellent results and impact. And we have all the documents and the report on the implementation of this project that they are available on the web. The second is how to create partnership at the city level in South Africa. This was done through a reimbursable advisory service program in South Africa, and basically it contributed to a policy reform, but also to the implementation of some of the government program. And it covers 6 main thematic areas. So economic development, human settlement, development of strategy and sector strategies, governance, infra finance, urban transport planning, and urbanization review. And this last one is the most important analytical work that we did in South Africa, is basically how South Africa can take advantage of the urbanization so they can improve their growth, but at the same time, how they can make their economy more productive in terms of job creation. And the urbanization review report is also available and on the web. The third example that we are bringing, and I thought that it is important to share with you, is basically about the housing market in Mexico. And it was a very good program there. So basically, it helped to create environment for more private sector participation in the housing sector, with focus on how the private sector can help the government basically provide affordable housing. We looked at the policy and subsidies. We also, the bank supported basically develop the mortgage and the commercial banks, and finally some subsidies and how the household can also have access to a new innovative financing tools, so they can purchase also their houses. I'm gonna go very quickly on that one. I know that we are running a little bit late. So here is about urban growth monitoring and risks area in Brazil, and the bank supported the development of new tool for monitoring disaster risk areas and urban growth. I'm presenting these tools basically to show to our audience today that we don't need to start basically from scratch. For every single challenges, for every single issues, I'm sure there are other countries that they have already worked on, they have approached it. It's good to hear about the approach that they use it to overcome those challenges. It's good to hear about the concept and about the program that they developed basically to tap on those opportunities. But definitely there is always a need to customize and to adapt those models, those approaches, those concepts to every single context, and even at some time to the city context if it is about the city level engagement. This slide is basically to share with you a very recent tool that we developed in Jordan, and it is about basically growth scenario. Is a nice model that collect the main data and information about a city like Amman, and we develop different scenarios with different targets, with different objectives, and with some assumptions. I don't know what kind of mobility and urban transport you want, or what kind of electricity or energy generation you want, etc., etc. And it can tell you about how much land consumption you will need, how many energy you will consume, how many greenhouse gases you emit, the infra cost, the municipal service. And it's basically a nice model, a nice tool that any decision maker can use to basically select the best option and recommend the best pathways for the transformation of his or her city. And finally, this is another example on how we improve and strengthen the territorial planning in Colombia. And that's all. So I would like to thank you so much. I know it was a little bit long, but you know, an agenda like the city agenda deserves definitely such investment. Thank you very, very much once again, and happy to get your questions, and at the same time, very, very happy to hear from our panelists. Over to you, Mr. Ferris.
Jafar, much appreciated for the deep dive with regards to urban landscape. I think you covered the topic in a brilliant manner and in a very edutainment kind of fashion. We have a question I see from one of our audience members. I'll read it out loud to you, Jafar, directly if you allow me. Antonio Campos, how can the new cities in Kuwait be more competitive, considering that the majority of Kuwaitis work in the public sector? What kind of activities can be attractive for the development of new cities? Do the new cities' policies involve decentralizing the public sector? Over to you.
I don't have an answer for that. I would like, however, to suggest an approach, because
go ahead.
It should definitely be you, Kuwaitis, to decide about your city, about the future of your city, how you would like to have it in the future. But what I can say, for a city like Kuwait, in a city-state like Kuwait, I think the Kuwait city today deserves a very systematic diagnostic. To diagnostic not only the challenges and the problems, but also to identify what are the potentials and the opportunities that your city offers. And these potentials can be geographic, can be natural resources, can be human capital, can be connectivity, can be anything. So through this city diagnostic, we can also help you identifying basically what would be the 3 or 4 strategic pathways for the upcoming 3 to 4 decades that the city of Kuwait can have. And for that, you need a vision, you need a dream for your city. So those pathways can really be developed in a way that after 12 months, 16 months max, through a very inclusive approach and using a good platform where we will have the main players and the main deciders on the city talking together and trying to agree on a sort of vision for your city. If we have the potential and you have the challenges and you have the vision, now how we can basically get this vision translated to action. And here where we need to develop what we call a strategic roadmap for the transformation of the city of Kuwait, again, to be competitive and prosper, to be livable and to be resilient. We did it in many, many countries. We did it for many large cities. And I think Kuwait today deserves such kind of thinking, such kind of inclusive approach to agree on a vision, on the future, and then, believe me, it will be easy to identify how to position the city of Kuwait. I'll stop here.
Excellent. That's a really good point to relay and share the baton to my dear friend, His Excellency Dr. Ghassan Khoja from the World Bank heading Kuwait's office for some kind of remarks with regards to the presentation. Go ahead, Ghassan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, dear Faris. And I will actually have a question for my dear friend Jafar, but I will do it maybe after my remarks. And it has to do with his most recent comment that he made just now. But let me first start by giving my sincere thanks to His Excellency Dr. Khalid Mehdi for this kind invitation and really for the very solid partnership that we have with the government of Kuwait, but also with the General Secretariat of the Supreme Council for planning and developed. This presentation was supposed to take place in person on March 8th. I remember the date very well. Our team was supposed to be in Kuwait physically to make this presentation and discuss some of these very important topics that Jafar has brought up. Unfortunately, we couldn't, but here we are. We're adapting to this new normal. It's really great that GSSCPD is also focusing on this topic. We saw from Jafar's presentation how important cities are. We saw also how important resilient, sustainable, and livable cities are. And I have to tell you from my personal experience being in Kuwait, you know, as I stand in our offices in Hamra, and I look down on the city of Kuwait, there is so much potential there. There's so much untapped potential. To be frank about it, there's significant potential. A lot of it has not been tapped. The beautiful coastline, the highly educated population, the geographical location of Kuwait. I think a lot of it is untapped, and I think, you know, we ought to look at the opportunities of moving forward on this agenda that I think Jafar has put forward. I do hope that this presentation, you know, is useful to you in terms of informing policy in Kuwait. As His Excellency said, you know, we can bring the global knowledge, but it's only Kuwaitis, and Kuwait can then take that and fit that into the political, social, economic, and cultural context of Kuwait. My sincere thanks to my good friend Jafar and his team. They put an amazing presentation, and you know, I think, you know, it's very hard to accumulate all the experience that this team that Jafar has assembled just to put this presentation into, you know, a few slides. So the experience is, you know, hundreds of years of experience, I think, among this team. And you can see that in Jafar's gray hair. Obviously, that experience shows very, very well, Jafar. But also very special thanks. Jafar is shy to say that he's worked extensively on Kuwait, so he knows Kuwait very, very well. He's worked on a number of programs in Kuwait, so he's not a stranger to Kuwait. Ibn al-Balad, as we like to say. And sincere thanks to our really very good friend Faris for his energy and passion in putting these KPPC seminars, which I follow all the time. I attend either in person or virtually. I've been attending these. I see Faris's beard getting the COVID length, looking great, Faris. So if you don't mind, I use my privilege to ask a question also of Jafar. Is that okay, Faris?
Yes, go ahead, Dr. Hassan, all yours.
Yeah. So the question for Jafar is it's very complex political economy of cities, right? I mean, we look at Kuwait, and you have the Kuwait municipality on one side, you have the housing, public works and housing, you have environmental authority, you have state property, which is under Ministry of Finance. Each one, you have Nizam al-Malkiya, which is another part of Ministry of Finance. So you have a lot of players in any city, and let's not talk about Kuwait, but I'm giving the example of Kuwait because I know there's a lot of players with a lot of vested interest across these. So how best to bring, and you mentioned that in your last comment, is that everybody needs to come to the table so that they can realize the potential. What are the best strategies really to bring everybody to the table, noting that each one has their own little sort of turf and fiefdoms and so forth. And I think this question is also, if you don't mind, Your Excellency, Dr. Khalid, is also directed to you, because I think you grappled from a planning perspective and bringing all these people together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hassan, and thanks a lot. Yes, I know a little bit Kuwait, but you educated me a lot on Kuwait and the political economy. Listen, the political economy is in every single country, for every single sector, and this is something that we need to keep in mind for any new engagement. But what proved to be, I would say, effective in many countries, that there is no place for big bang approach when you are pretty sure that the political economy is very high. So based on my very modest experience, first having one or two champions that can help you basically identifying the right entry points, some low-hanging fruits, building an excellent platform where we can bring basically the key players and start basically having a common understanding of your goals, but at the same time put something on the table where there is more agreement than disagreement, I think. And then as soon as you start, I think you start showing also results and impacts on the ground, people start believing on you. So I think phased approach, champion, platform, this proved to be very efficient in many cases. And I will let you know, I never been exposed to a very complex environment and very specific social fabric like the city of Karachi in Pakistan. And I'm sure you heard about it. And believe me, it took us 18 months to have basically a large part of the stakeholders around the table. And they agreed. It was not perfect, but they agreed at least they should do something. They should start today. Let's start where we have some common and good consensus, and we'll take it from there. I think Kuwait, as I know, it's much easier in many other large cities in the world. And let's also, the government system, the governance system, I think it can be very helpful. Now, definitely we need to start. We need to start, and no better than starting by a very constructive, candid, and honest dialogue, and share experience, share what others did, how they overcome these challenges or other challenges. And of course, talking to the Minister of Finance should be completely different from talking to the Mayor of Kuwait. The Minister of Finance is about, tell me the cost of non-action, tell me what I will gain, how this will impact my fiscal space, etc., etc. The Mayor of Kuwait, it's something else. We would like to have my citizens very well served, very happy. Don't push me for something that politically is not maybe easy to manage. Don't push me for the agenda where the political economy is very high. So it's always a trade-off, Hassan, right? But believe me, it's everywhere. And that's why, and I'm sure you know that, Hassan, now for any new engagement, we always start by producing 3-5 pages where what are and to basically have a sort of assessment of the political economy of possible engagement for any sector, for the stakeholder, etc., etc. So yes, it will be difficult, but I think it's possible. Over.
Jafar, thank you so much for your exhaustive answer and very delicate way of dealing with the subject matter. Dr. Ghassan, really appreciate your statement. Now, and lastly, the baton is yours, Your Excellency, Dr. Khalid Mehdi, for the closing remarks with regards to our online webinar for the KPPC. All yours, Dr. Khalid.
Thank you very much, Faris. And there is a question being saved to me by Mr. Ghassan. I would like to address in another quite extensive. I'm impressed with the knowledge and the experience that you took us in a very short time, in a 30 minutes. I get congested with too much information here that I need to swallow and to digest, honestly. I do believe that the concept of cities, city planning, all of these resilience, they are quite philosophical sometimes. It gets into a very interesting philosophy due to the interconnectedness and the complexity surrounding all of these issues. I would like to shed the light on something that the Kuwaiti government is doing right now, which is the Kuwait Master Plan 2040, which has been created with a motto, which is toward the smart Kuwait, with the basic idea of creating more cities other than the only city, which is Kuwait City we have right now. As you know, Kuwait is a city-state. It is a one-city country that has all of these complexity being and entanglement. Our complexity comes due to our small size, not because of our big size, which is quite different. It's a different paradigm. The complexity came from the industry, which they kept extending the suburban areas. However, the Kuwait Master Plan 4 is moving toward creating more cities and secondary cities as well. It's a different concept that's been developed in the current master plan. What I would like also to shed the light on the governance of city. This is where Ghassan is actually pointing out how do you get all of these people being engaged. The question is, the complexity right now comes from the centralization, the over-centralization of the Kuwait municipality, which has been in charge of everywhere. We have all the governance, the municipality goes back into that central body. They are not actually being decentralized. I like it when you said the Minister of Finance talked to the mayor. Unfortunately, our mayor functionality, our mayor job description does not fit what we are talking about. When I create secondary city with a real mayor actually being appointed in charge of building up a different realm and a different, but to thank you again for your from Washington, D.C. Never let us go. And you always be with us in all the forums as well as in this lecture series. As you know, this Kuwait Public Policy lecture series has been directed toward bringing the global side of the story. And your topic today was a very, very, very important and very crucial to us. Thank you, and I thank the whole team for making this, as well as Mshari and Abdullah and the whole KPPC team, as well as Ahmed. Over to you, Faris. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you, Dr. Ghassan. Thank you, Jafar, and thank you to our translator, Lemia, for doing an excellent job with regards to this program. We look forward to seeing you next month with a new different thematic. Thank you for our audiences, and see you next month.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.